Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome back to another film review. And this is actually kind of a surprise one. It was a very, very welcome surprise. This is, of course, our review for Borat's subsequent movie film, and I'm only doing this title once: Delivery, a prodigious bribe to American regime for make-benefit once glorious nation of Kazakhstan. This is, of course, the long-awaited sequel to Borat. We did do a review on the first Borat film, which you can check out. It's one of our previous videos. And this is one that we were all looking forward to, and I think just a film that we all needed. Not just because there aren't any new films coming out this year, but just what it goes into. And we'll go into it later on, but we'll just go over the socials for the time being.
Yes, sure. So please, if you could go to the comments below and tell us what your thoughts were on Borat. I'm sure that a lot of you at home would have watched this. It's one of the only films out there at the moment, and it's on Amazon Prime. They've been advertising it really well over there. So please let us know what you thought of the new Borat film. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and of course subscribe. We are getting so close to our next sub goal, so please go and do that. And if you want to find out about some of the future upcoming videos, then please go to Facebook. Just type in Cinema Savvy. The link is in the description as well. If you go to Twitter, it is at cinema_savvy. And if you want to go to TeePublic, you can pick up a t-shirt with the Cinema Savvy logo on if you would like. Help support the channel. Okay. So this film came out of nowhere. I mean, there was little mutterings of things happening, and then it just kind of blurted out. It released. So I feel like we have to talk about kind of what our thoughts were going into this film. So I'll start with George. What were you thinking? Like, what was happening?
It was weird because I think when you think about a Borat 2, you think, oh, it's not going to be as good as the original, or do we need it, and that kind of thing. And I think because of how this year's gone, and I think no one probably understands that better than Sacha Baron Cohen, which is why he's made this film, maybe more so the last 4 years of how they've gone, he made it. But I think we all are familiar with the news report. But was it probably like March, April time? It was nearer the start of Corona when it was hitting the rest of the world, where there's like, oh my God, Sacha Baron Cohen's done something at a music festival. Is this for a show? Is this for a film? Is he just doing it because he can do it? And there was all this weird stuff, and he wasn't dressed up as Borat, obviously. He was in character as a hillbilly and stuff, and that was a really weird thing, because then obviously it went very quiet. And then there were tidbits of Borat. I think, Chris, you mentioned you'd seen some posting online that people had seen him in costume or something like that, and it was very strange, and it was all very quiet. And then it must have been a month ago. Straight away, it's just Sacha Baron Cohen, he's not making Borat 2, he's already made it, he's filmed it, and he's been screening it, it's been edited, everything. It's all ready to go. And everyone's like, whoa, okay. Fox owned the rights to, and now Disney. Surely Disney didn't fund a new Borat film. And then it came out that Amazon, he'd self-funded it, and Amazon bought the rights off him. So, yeah, it came out of nowhere. We had, one trailer? And then I say the last maybe week or two, we've had a lot of marketing stunts. He set up a Borat Twitter account. Little bits of the stories have been leaked. I think, obviously, the main one being the finale of the film. I didn't know what to expect, and then I don't normally check out reviews for films, but I was a bit worried. I did check the reviews before this, and I was happy that it wasn't. I don't really follow Rotten Tomatoes much, but if this had been sat on 1%, I'd have been like, oh God, like he's just brought this character back because he thinks he needs to or whatnot. But when the talk was more so that it's a political satire than an outright comedy, I was sold on that, because I think that's exactly what we need this year. Maybe not necessarily what the people deserve. But if the timing was right to do a Borat 2, it was to do it for this new reason. And obviously, without heading into the film too much, he'd very much written it around the last few months, which was perfect for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, as you mentioned, like there's always that hesitation whenever you know a sequel's coming out to something so many years after the fact. I think it's been, 14 years? And not just sequels in general like that, but especially comedy sequels. It's very difficult to recapture that lightning in a bottle. And I think even Sacha Baron Cohen was aware of that. And I think he worked that into the film very well, in that, if he went onto the streets now as Borat has become such a famous character, a famous comedic character. Everyone knows him, especially in the States. And we see that in the film, where he then has to go in disguise. So we see new personas, almost new characters that he's created, while still being obviously that Borat character. And I thought it was a very smart way to go. And I mean, if you want any bigger laugh, all you have to do is just turn a mirror on the political situation, on what's currently going, not just in the US, but in the UK as well, but especially obviously in the US with this. And it was great. And it's with sequels like this, it would be, especially with a film like Borat, it would be very, very easy to just do exactly the same thing again. Those sort of disconnected segments, sort of like the candid camera kind of thing, which works for the first one, is brilliant in the first one. But I think even Sacha Baron Cohen was aware that he had to do something a bit different for this. I think this one, definitely more so than the first one, has more of a plot. I know the first film did have a loose plot around trying to track down Pamela Anderson and everything like that. But this one actually weirdly has quite a lot of heart to it. It is like a father-daughter story. And in its weird kind of messed up, warped way, it has a beginning, middle, end. It has character arcs. It has kind of like a weird unspoken depth to it, as well as being this sort of like hilarious satire on what's going on with US politics at the moment. So I thought it was a good blend. I thought it was an interesting blend and an interesting continuation for the Borat character.
I think it's very important to note that it's been 14 years since the first Borat film, and so much has changed in the world since then. So much. And given the current situation in America, in the world, this film almost feels like it came at the right time. And I don't know whether he had anything planned, like 2020, I'm going to make a sequel to the Borat film or anything like that, or whether he just went, fuck it, this is the situation right now. I'm going to go and I'm going to try and film and I'm going to see what we get. Because this is a very important year in world history, shall we say, with the current coronavirus pandemic. I mean, from the US point of view, you've got where this film is set, at least you've got the election off the back of what has been a testing for years for the country. It's almost like all the stars aligned and he just decided to go for it. And the fact that we didn't have much kind of being leaked from it, I really enjoyed the fact that we didn't really know much about it until going into it. And it was just the little tidbits, like the original title which they leaked, which was like The Gift of the Sex Monkey to Mikhail Pence. Just little tidbits of information that were leaked and stuff like that. It just built up kind of the idea in our heads of what the film was going to be. And I was also surprised that it had a beginning, a middle, and an end. So you wouldn't expect it from a Borat film. We're saying this now as if it's like a series of films. It is now. And he absolutely nails the humor in this film. If we're just going into kind of our thoughts on it as a whole, this film was needed. It really was. It was an enjoyable comedy. The jokes, the ones which are callbacks to the previous film and the previous times from the film, were fantastic. And the new humor that he brought to it was just excellent given the current situation. He absolutely nailed it.
Mm-hmm. I'm the same with that. I think there's so much that's happened where I think you look at 2020, so it's really hard. We're not going to do spoilers, but I think we should obviously mention the things that have been in the news, i.e. the Mike Pence thing and the Rudy Giuliani thing. So we won't go into fully yet, but a key scene of this takes place, and in this statement they say we've only had 15 people die from coronavirus. We're controlling it really well. That hit me, not because of how early it was, but I'm wondering if this film was in production before Corona, because when you're watching this, obviously Corona comes into it, but it's so political from the get-go, finishing with the word votes. I wonder if he'd actually prepped to make a political satire, things he wanted to do, and then the coronavirus was like just a ball thrown into it, and he was able to sort of play with that as well, if that makes sense. And I think that was a really big thing, that it wasn't just this ridiculous things that happened during lockdown, because of course a fair amount of it was. There's a lot of things which are quite harrowing, and you realise this was done at the start of the year. But obviously on paper, they've now confirmed this is the first film that's been released that was made sort of before, during, and, well, it's still during the pandemic. So he's kind of won his own title in that. And to be fair to him, he won it out before the election. Here we are, 9 days before now? So I think he's probably timed this to perfection. Did the right thing by selling it to a streaming service. I think in America, they're showing it in drive-ins, so people can, in theory, watch it on a big screen. And it would be really weird watching this with loads of other people in cars, because would you hear weird laughter coming from certain cars and stuff? I don't know, but as an outright, this is probably the most I've laughed out loud at a film since probably Jojo Rabbit and 22 Jump Street. I mean, there's been great comedy since then, but in terms of actually laughing out loud, it's not something I do often. But so many excellent scenes, which I'm not going to go into detail on them all. I just thought it was a masterpiece, especially in line with his other work.
I think
oh, go on, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say the genius of his work is in the fact that he comes from a family of quite famous psychologists. His brother has done many papers. I even studied his brother at school. That's how big a name of a psychologist his brother is. but I feel like he's taken that kind of that edge to it and just kind of turned it into a comedic kind of outlook. Because obviously, like with going into kind of how people's minds work and everything like that, a comedian needs to be able to do that. And how quick he is with his things on the fly. I mean, we were talking about this before we went live. I'm not going to go into details with the scene, but a lot of the lines are improv. You can tell just from how quickly he's able to respond to other people's statements. He's so in character that he's just able to immediately just switch it back on someone else and get them to say the most outrageous things and get them to show their true colors. And that's something that not many comedians are able to do. A lot of comedians just make jokes about the situation. He's able to make the other person make the joke, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a special skill which not many people have and not many people have even put to film. I think this film is a perfect example of kind of following up from the 2006 film of being able to do that, but once again do it and people still being fooled by it.
Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, it's kind of that. I mentioned this on the first Borat review. It's that humor that sort of meets you halfway. Like you set it up, but the real hilarity comes from the person's reaction or their outlook on something or whatever it happens to be, especially with this one. But as much as I thought Sacha Baron Cohen was fantastic in this film, I think to me, the walkaway was easily Maria Bakalova as his daughter Tuta. When the trailers came out, I wasn't saying that I was kind of worried about it, but it's when you have that pairing. In the first one, you had Borat and Azamat, and it was just sort of brilliant seeing those two together. His character does get a payoff, which I'm not going to give away in this review, but they do address his character. And with this one being a father and daughter thing, I was like, is this going to be too much of a shake-up in terms of the dynamic? Is it going to have the same kind of comedic pairing? But honestly, and this is introducing her as well. I did check her credits. She's done a few films before this, so this isn't like her first film, but I think this is her first film of sort of
the films that she's done. I was going to say the films that she's done aren't that big. Where on earth did you find her?
Yeah,
like seriously.
So yeah, she's a Bulgarian actress, and I'm assuming I don't really know what they do with the accents and the language in this. If it's sort of like an amalgamation of sort of genuinely foreign sounding accents or whatever. But she had it all. I mean, she had the heart of like for the more emotional moments in the film, and again, like the absolute balls on both of them for like putting themselves in these situations and doing this absolutely fearless. There's a moment which, again, you kind of, it teases in the trailer, but they go to like a debutante ball, which was easily sort of the walk away scene for me. That was oh my God, I can't even go into it. I don't want to go into it because people need to watch this film. I do think though, sort of, it's going to be a very interesting hindsight film, I think. Overall, I think I do still prefer the first Borat film. I think in terms of amount of laughs out loud, I think the first Borat is more enduring. This, to me, seems like it's going to be more of a time capsule film, specifically to 2020, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think that you could easily sort of throw on the first Borat film at any point. We even said this 14 years on, it's still as good as it was back then. With this one, specifically with coronavirus, the political situation and the jokes and how the film designed and framed around that narrative, it's going to be interesting to see if this one holds up as well as the first one does, because it is so centered around 2020.
I think that's a really big thing as well, because anyone of any age can watch Borat. It does. I mean, not any age, as in a kid could be born. A kid could be born to like today, and he could watch Borat in 15 years, and he'll find it funny still. But the 2020 stuff, I mean, either way, I mean, humanity's going to lose if Trump wins, but if they get re-elected, this film's going to be funny still, because it's like people still vote for these clowns. They don't get elected. It's like, look how ridiculous it all was then. So it's going to be really interesting as a sort of contextual thing. And I think I prefer that from a sequel, because if he wanted to do what he did in the first film, is what we said, it's a boring repeat. So I'm happy that he's took a risk. I think you're right. She was the standout, especially that scene at the end. I think she said into that he was always watching out for her. Like, I think with Sacha Baron Cohen, I think it plays his advantage that if he was by himself doing these things, it would be easier to spot that it's Sacha Baron Cohen, which is why obviously the thing that got leaked, we all knew, was him by himself singing on stage. But when you've got the father-daughter dynamic, it's not something I would have expected him to do. It's not something he's really done in Bruno. Granted, he had an adopted baby in it. Obviously, in Borat, he's a double team of Asmat. You know, even Ali G, he's got a group. Him and a daughter's just been a different sort of double act with him. And I thought that it was a really smart way, because I think some of the harder jokes are all down to her and how she works around them. And once again, it's that humor. I mean, he went to Cambridge, so it's what Tay mentioned. He's from a smart family, they've done their stuff. He's got a degree from Cambridge Uni, which, you know, to you Americans, it's basically like you've got Harvard, we've got Oxford and Cambridge. And the fact he went into comedy off being there is, there's a reason why he's good at what he does, because he writes the stuff knowing they're the punchline, but he knows how he can get it out of them, because certainly during one of the scenes at a public event, it's funny because we're laughing at people doing Nazi salutes. We're laughing at people that saying they're going to chop up journalists. Sacha Baron Cohen's obviously singing it, but his ambition is to get them to repeat it, to catch them on camera doing it, and he succeeds in all of that. And I think that's the difference between him and other comedians, is that he knows what he wants. He just doesn't want a reaction from them. He knows the reaction he needs from them. And I think that's why he works. And, you know, we've seen, again, it's short, it's worth mentioning, it's what, an hour and a half. And there might have been 40 minutes of things that didn't work that we'll never see because people might have spotted it too quickly. It might not have been good enough. But he always has enough to show us, to show how it's working. And I think it has that. And some things did fall flat. I don't mind the plot. I think it needed it again to be different from the first. There are a couple of scenes here and there that didn't work as well as some did in the first film. But I think, again, going contextually, some of the laughs to me were stronger than the first one. But it'll be interesting seeing this on a second viewing, because I do want to watch it again soon. I don't know when, maybe the night before the election or something. But it's just I just love watching him sort of do what he does. I haven't seen his TV series, which is really bad, from about 2 years ago. I've seen clips of it.
His TV series is fantastic. It does exactly the same kind of thing that he's done with previous stuff. But he just brings in different characters and is able to make other people look like fools themselves just by giving them the setup and letting them say the punchline. I think you've nailed it with that kind of style of comedy that he goes for.
Yeah, I don't really know what else to add, to be honest, because I don't particularly want to go into specifics. We've sort of talked about the ending sort of being probably the most controversial thing to come out of this film. And it was really disturbing to watch. I'm sure this is probably his defense, actually. There's probably loads of stuff that we haven't seen, because obviously with a film, it's edited and it's chopped up and it's made to look a certain way. But I don't know how seeing any more footage from that scene could make the situation better for him. It was very disturbing to watch. And even seeing his testimony is even funnier, the excuses that he's given. But I don't know how much we want to delve into that scene or whatnot, because I know that we mentioned we wanted to talk about the ending. They saved the best till last, essentially, the most shocking thing till last.
Yeah, I'm going to say one thing. It's not really related to the film. It's more about the actual politics of it. And I know that a key concept of this is to get people to vote. And I think the way we are, this is a side point. This is sort of, I'd say this in ChatGPT, that I don't think this will change how anyone intends to vote. I think every single person has known, maybe for 4 years, maybe for the last few months, that might have switched sides. I don't think Borat 2 is going to make anyone vote that hasn't already. I'm not saying that as a criticism, but it's good they're telling people to do it. But then I also think that final scene is obviously disturbing. It's not illegal, which is a sad thing. But he knows what he's doing. He's saying, look, here's another one of them. Because if you'd have had 4 years of someone in power and they were clean as a whistle, this would have been one of the biggest sort of political stings in years. And, you know, they've got a president that admitted to doing sexual assault on someone before an election and still getting elected. So I don't think it's got the power to sway people, but that's not what Sacha Baron Cohen wants to do. I just think that's worth mentioning for it, because everyone knows who they're voting for. I don't think people are sitting on fences. They might have been a couple of years back, but this year I think it's pushed everyone to where they want to be. So it will be interesting to see if anything else comes out from this. He's been releasing videos on his Twitter feed. He's got an official Borat Twitter account now. They released a 40-second video. So as no one knows the daughter, she's been going undercover since this film as the journalist, attending basically more Trump sort of rallies and stuff. And they released one on the day, on Friday, and it was a 40-second song. But she just got to go to an event like as press, you know, sit in the back. But they weren't doing masks. They weren't checking people like their temperatures and stuff. And they were just exposing more things from them. So I think the fact that she wasn't unknown has made it a lot easier to get some of the newer things that Sacha Baron Cohen might have been able to have done 10, 15 years ago, but maybe couldn't do now. Because even the TV show from the clips I saw, it's fantastic. It's great. We know what we're going to get, but you can still always tell it's Sacha Baron Cohen. but it's again playing off the people that don't know it's him, which is incredible.
I think yeah, I was just going to say, because they do address it in the film, they do address the fact that Borat as a character is now known in the US. So it's going to be a lot more difficult to kind of pull the wool over people's eyes or anything like that. I think that's where the dynamic of the daughter comes in best, because he's still able to get away with the stuff. And credit to her, because she I mean, I'll agree with both of you. She is fantastic in this film. She is excellent. And she's able to kind of bring forth the same levels of comedy that Borat did in the first film in different ways. And my question to you guys now is, it's been 14 years since the first film. We have this film on this year. Do you think that at some point in the future there is room for the third and kind of final film in a trilogy if it gets to a difficult stage or something outrageous happens that he's able to jump onto?
The Borat trilogy. That's a phrase I never thought I'd ever hear in my life. I mean, never say never, because, you know, all these years gone by, we probably never thought that a Borat 2 would ever happen. You know, he's not getting any younger, but he's still managing to do these things. Not to say that he's excessively old or anything, but you need that kind of fresh energy from like back in the day. I think we'll probably see some appearances and stuff, and especially now as he's got a Twitter account, who knows, maybe he'll be sort of more active on there. Maybe just sort of the fallout after this film for the next few months into next year, maybe. I'd like to think that he could, but I think that it's got to be something damn good. It's got to be something worth doing, and more importantly, something worth saying. I think 2020 has definitely been that year where there's certainly a lot of things to say, and I think Sacha Baron Cohen's definitely jumped on that and sees the opportunity why he could. We don't know what the future holds. If something equally as ridiculous happens or cataclysmic or world-ending happens, and I'm sure Borat will be there leading the charge for a third Borat film. But as it is right now, I don't know. I think it's maybe they could do some kind of spin-off with the daughter, but I think that's going to sort of dilute, I don't want to say the message of Borat, but I think it would. On the surface, they're kind of sort of crude, juvenile kind of humor films, but when you look deep into them, as you said, like, he is a smart guy, Sacha Baron Cohen, there's always rhyme and reason to everything that's being done. It's always to either show people the reality of what's going on or to poke fun at the reality of what's going on. So a tentative yes, maybe, but I think it would I honestly think it'd probably be like another 10 years or so before we get anything. It's going to have to be something big, I think.
Yeah, it's too tricky because it's what you mentioned at the start of it. It's hesitant to do it, and has he got new characters he'd want to do? Could he bring back other characters? I don't think you could do Bruno in 2020. I didn't rewatch it.
I was going to say his next film apparently is called Mandrake the Magician, where he plays the magician Mandrake.
I mean, that's the thing. Yeah. I think he's very good at what he does. I mean, I've not seen Trial of Chicago 7 yet, which I know is meant to be excellent in. Then obviously he was in Hugo, which is a Scorsese film, which I remember being very. I was like, why is Borat in Hugo?
But he was fantastic in that.
And we were all robbed of him being in the actual decent Queen film that they should have made, but they never did, which is always sad to think about, especially when he's got his moustache out in Borat. Because
I was watching this again with that in mind, and I was like, he would have been fantastic as Freddie Mercury. Just visually, I was seeing it. I could see it, what it would have been.
And he's not afraid. He's not afraid to do things other people wouldn't. So it'll be interesting. I think he's someone that I can always sort of see him doing something. The one character who I think does need to come back on a side note is Ali G. I think the world has been waiting for almost 20 years for Ali G to return now. And
Ali G works with British kind of human, British politics, and that would be a very interesting thing to look into.
Especially as our politicians don't want to feed starving kids. And in Ali G1, on a side point, his only goal is to save the leisure centre. So if he's not already thinking about bringing back Ali G to take on the Conservative government, then should be his next project. But aside from that, it's a tough one with Borat. I think Borat 2 is better than it had any right to be. And I would be worried about a third one. But wouldn't surprise me with this day and age of things. But maybe he'd want to cameo him in other things. You know, if Amazon's, they've got the rights not just to Borat 2, but to Borat 1. So if Amazon's maybe going to play around with that, I think there's a lot of potential. Certainly on the streaming side of things, I think it opens more doors for him to come back.
Can we get a Borat cinematic universe, guys?
All his characters. Oh boy. Start with the Dictator, Brothers Grimsby, or maybe, hopefully not. But Netflix are getting on the Sacha Baron Cohen hype as well. You go to their main page, there's Bruno, there's Ali G, there's Brothers Grimsby. They're all there on the front, so they know what they're doing. But yeah, I think I've pretty much said everything I can on this. I think it's a fantastic standalone film. I don't think you have to have watched the first one, but you'll appreciate some of the jokes, some of the continuation from the first one if you have. I think overall, as a comedy, the first one works more for me in terms of laughs per minute, in terms of how it's structured. But I think this one's bold, and it's the only way that a continuation could have gone. It had to have done something different. It had to get deeper, and it had to go with a different angle to not only be different from the first one, but also to be relevant to what's going on right now. And I think that Baron Cohen nailed it. And as I mentioned already, Maria Bakalova was easily the walk away, and it'd be very interesting to see what she does next after this film.
Definitely, I'm on the similar opinion. Nothing more I can add. It's just if you haven't seen it, do watch it. If you're gonna dislike it, it's probably because of your political allegiances, and I'm happy to say that now.
Yeah, I completely agree. This film it's a laugh a minute. It's fantastic. It's so well written. It's so well done. And yeah, I believe the only people who wouldn't enjoy this, maybe some of the crude humor parts, people are going to kind of wince away and stuff like that, but you're always going to get that in a Sacha Baron Cohen film. I agree with George. If you dislike the film based on what you see, then it's not to do with the actual film itself. It's to do with your political beliefs. And that is it's a political film. What do you expect?
Yeah, and it is cringeworthy, and there were moments where I was kind of reaching back and covering my eyes, and I don't want to look at the screen, but I also do at the same time. No, it was brilliant. It was just what the doctor ordered, to be honest. It's what was needed. I think it was nice to have a film like that and a good comedy, because they're quite rare now. But anyway, we want to hear from you guys. Comment, share, like, subscribe, all of that good stuff, and let us know what you think of Borat, the first movie, as well as this new one. Have you seen it? What did you think of it compared to the first one? And also, if you want to follow us and what we've got for our upcoming videos, we've got a lot planned around Halloween, a big video coming out Halloween night. Best way to follow that is on Facebook. If you go to Facebook and just type in Cinema Savvy, Twitter @cinema_savvy, and we also have a TeePublic link with a few designs on there that you can feel free to pick up if you want to do so. Link in the description. As I said, big Halloween video. We have a lot of films to catch up on as well, specifically one that's been mentioned in this Trial of the Chicago 7, which we'll be getting on at some point. We'll have more movie reviews coming out, more film content, and everything in between. So, yeah, until the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.